Hey guys, this is Kelly from Sevens Emporium, and today we're going to cover coloring pages. I've had a lot of people ask me what kind of stabilizer do I use, what kind of fabrics do I use, what kind of markers should I use. So we're going to go over all of those things today. When I'm making these, I just use a regular tearaway stabilizer. I don't use a cutaway because I just want to be able to rip that off when I'm finished and then cut out my page. So just a regular tearaway will be fine. As far as fabrics go, my personal favorite is the white vinyl. I like this because you just put down one layer of white vinyl, you stitch your design, you add your back, and you're finished. A lot of people also like using the white felt, and they will top that with a clear vinyl. And most people are putting down their felt, and then they're putting down their clear vinyl, and then they're stitching their design. In the past, I'd actually recommended that you could, if you wanted to, stitch the design and then put the clear vinyl on top, and that kind of protects the stitches, but it's not really necessary, and I think most people are choosing to stitch on top of the clear vinyl, and that way you get the same look and definition that you do in this, and it's kind of more of a border for the kids to know, you know, they can kind of feel the edge of that, where to kind of stop to color. I also really love having the chalkboard fabric. I love this because it's very durable. You can put this in the car, the kids can kick it. Chalk doesn't melt in the car, which I personally love, so if you've got a lot of traveling to do or anything like that, I really super love these. People have asked how to get the holes in these pages. I love my Crop-A-Dile. It has this big hole right here, and it's easy to get right up in there, punch it out, and it's not a problem. It doesn't have any kind of problem going through the vinyl or the felt or the chalkboard fabric or canvas. This thing is an awesome tool. I've had people want to know about markers and chalk, so I'm going to cover that really quick. I'm going to start with this one, and we'll go over how that kind of works. So this is just regular chalk that I've colored with, and a regular paper towel, and you can just wipe that right off. If it's got a little smudge on it and you don't like it, get you a baby wipe and you can clean that right off. People have wanted to know about chalk markers, and I have some chalk markers here. I'm going to color with a little chalk marker. That's what that one looks like. I have never found chalk markers to wipe off quite as easily as chalk. It always leaves kind of a little discoloration there. But you can get that off as well with a baby wipe. And you can kind of see a little bit of hue of the chalk marker where I colored it earlier, that it kind of discolored it a tiny bit, but I don't really think that that's very noticeable at all, and after you've used it a whole bunch of times, it's going to kind of get stuff down in the grooves anyway, so I don't really think that's a big deal. If you're going to do the chalkboard pages, I would only use chalk or chalk markers on these. I wouldn't use anything else. Not that you would probably want to because it's black, but just the same. People have wanted to know how I packaged these. When I sold these at a craft fair last year, I would sell 2 pieces of chalk, and I had 2 binder rings together in a bag. And so when they bought 1 page, they got 1 package of this with it. And in my particular area, I sold this 1 page for $4, and you got this stuff with it. And all subsequent pages were $3. So, you know, 1 for $4, 2 for $7, so on. That worked in my area. Again, that's all kind of, it just depends on where you live, whether or not that's your particular price point, but that's kind of a good average. I also, when I displayed these, I had 1 sample book that I put together, and that way people could kind of thumb through it. They could see what the pages look like, kind of see what inventory I had. I had the actual pages arranged in, I think they were maybe in a basket, but that way people could see, okay, well, here's these pages, these are the pages I want to get, and then they could go through the box, pull it out, and make their book. And people were getting usually 3 to 4 pages, and they made great stocking stuffers and good travel books. So we're going to do a little talk about the clear vinyl real quick before we move on to the markers. I have always kind of been a little varied on what is my favorite gauge of clear vinyl. And I went to Joann and kind of looked at their colors, because you know they have the paper in between the layers of the vinyl. And I personally think, and my recommendation is, you can use the orange, which is 8 gauge. You can use kind of a teal green, and that's going to be 12 gauge, or you can go up to the yellow, which is 16 gauge. I think anything more than the 16 gauge, thicker than the yellow, is just kind of overkill for this type of project, and it's really not necessary. Then I also think that anything less than the 8 gauge, for me, is a little thin, and it kind of gives too much on the page. It's a little too stretchy, and I would be worried about that maybe ripping or tearing or something like that. So I personally would stick between 8 and 16 gauge for the clear vinyl on these. Now, people have wanted to know about the difference in markers, and I have several different kinds here, and we're going to kind of discuss the pros and cons of these. I have the actual Crayola brand ultra clean washable marker here, and we're going to try these out and see what happens. The color for that marker, I think, is really good. It's nice and solid. It's nice and filled in. It doesn't puddle. It's kind of nice. Try this. I have the Cra-Z-Art brand, which I know a lot of people have asked about it. It seems like Crayola and Cra-Z-Art are kind of the total winners when it comes to these. Those are the top brands. And again, these are just the standard washable markers. And I gotta say that for coloring pages, I do not like the Cra-Z-Art. You can see that it kind of puddled and it kind of smeared, and it's not a very solid, continuous color at all. So I would honestly not recommend those or package those with these pages, because people are gonna get home with it and it's gonna be a hot mess and they're not gonna know what to do with that. I have some dry erase washable markers, and I didn't know that they made a washable dry erase until recently, so I'm excited to try these out and see what happens. That looks pretty good. Pretty good on that. I don't see any puddling, and that has really good coverage. I like that. I have the Cra-Z-Art washable dry erase marker. And we'll check that out. That's pretty good. I like their dry erase marker much better for these coloring pages than I do the standard marker. It didn't puddle like the regular marker would. So I would say, all in all, that is a pretty good choice. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, what about regular Expo markers? And what about if you wanted to use a chalk marker? And we'll go over that. Here's the chalk marker. That's kind of the coverage on that. A little, not really as full of a color as the regular markers, but it still works. And we're going to try this dry erase marker. This is a regular Expo brand dry erase marker. And that has good color. And I did a little experiment earlier. I am not going to color this vinyl with regular marker, and I'll tell you why in just a second. People want to know how well this stuff wipes off. This is a regular paper towel. It's not wet or anything. That one's really on there. But it comes off pretty clean. And I'll hit it with a little bit of a baby wipe and we'll see what happens. There you go, good as new. So the clear vinyl took everything and it all came off really, really well. We'll go over this one with our regular dry towel. And you can see that is not letting go of that color. So we'll hit it with a baby wipe and see what happens. I may need to get a new baby wipe, I'm not sure. This one came mostly clean. It seems to me that maybe the chalk marker stained it a little bit. And maybe even the Crayola brand of the, what did I have here? The dry erase. You can still see a little bit of that there. Maybe even a little bit on the other side. But that's pretty good. That's pretty clean. Now, I did an experiment earlier with the Expo marker. Just this regular Expo marker on the white vinyl. And I colored it right here. And I have cleaned this with a dry towel. I've cleaned it with a baby wipe. I cleaned it. I actually got out a sponge with a little scrubby thing on it and tried to get that off. I hit it with nail polish remover, and finally when I used a little bit of mineral spirits, I got most of it off. But it still left some on there, and honestly I can't really tell that much difference. I don't know if you can tell this from the video, but the chalk marker and the washable dry erase marker, the Crayola brand, and the Expo marker all kind of leave color on this white vinyl. You can certainly use any of those, but just know that it might not come 100% clean. If you had like entire themed books, you could totally just put it together. Obviously this is a sample book, so it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I guess it kind of does. But you could do it that way too. So you can sell individual pages, or you can just sell an entire book. And I hope that that answers most of the questions that people have asked. If you have any more questions, please feel free to drop me a line. We're actually in the process of getting a website, but you can certainly get on Etsy for now. My web address will actually take you there. It's www.sevensemporium.com, and that'll take you to Etsy, and you can message me any other questions that you have about these coloring pages. Thanks a bunch.